All right, great to be here. Game week. I think this is always that transition you look forward to, and there's a lot of curiosity, obviously, within this team, and an opportunity to go out there on the field Saturday. We'll sort some of that out. I really appreciate the efforts, of this group going back to January, and then, followed up with the winter and the spring and the summer that we needed. And I think we, by and large, really thought our fall allowed us to continue to take that step in the right direction. And now we're poised with this first opportunity. And this opportunity obviously going to be a big challenge. Oregon, the number 7th ranked team in the country, undefeated, number 1 at the end of the regular season last year. Been a perennial powerhouse for many years, and we're going to have to go out there and obviously play very well, and that's going to be a challenge. And I think our guys are looking forward to that challenge, and the opportunity to play in an environment like Autzen Stadium, and all that means is we got to go out there and still play the game regardless of the environment. So we've done some things to prepare us the best we can, but to get out there or amongst the crowd like they have, you won't quite know what that feels like. So again, excited about it. I know releasing a depth chart today, formalizing our ideas, our thoughts at a few positions as we head into the week was important. Naming Justin the starter, I think that was clear for us as we came out of fall camp. And Justin still is learning, by the day, I would say, and without the luxury of spring ball, we have appreciated how he's went after it with his just attention to detail and willingness to work through the course of the summer and then fall camp. It's clear that this opportunity really matters to him, and I think our team has really embraced him because of who he is. And beyond his ability, I think that played a key role into his continued growth. He's a really good teammate. He's clearly got leadership capabilities, and I think we feel like he's got some playmaking capabilities as well. So with that, I'll open it up, but obviously excited for the opportunity.
You mentioned how he kind of fits into the culture. I guess, can you expand on that, how the team has kind of bought into him as a transfer to this program?
Yeah, I think underneath it all, he's a really good person. He's a hard worker. He didn't take anything for granted. Being a transfer, I think sometimes people certainly on the outside could have took for granted that Justin Lamson would start for us, but he didn't take that for granted. I think his personality just fits with our guys, and from the time he got here, late spring, early summer, his work ethic, just being one of the guys has been, I think, his biggest priority. And when you have that and you don't assume anything, I think in our culture you're gonna fit in just fine. And that's what we've tried to do, regardless of the position with transfers. Find guys that will fit into our culture versus our culture having to fit them. But I think it goes both ways. I think that's part of the reason Justin wanted to come here, is I think he saw a place that would suit him and fit him as well.
And then Patrick Vigen earning that backup spot. What did you see from him that you liked this fall camp?
Yeah, I think continued growth out of Patrick. Both Chance and Patrick had good springs, followed up, by good summers, and I think the difference between those two is pretty dang tight. But obviously, we'd have to figure out who's going to go in there next if something were to happen to Justin. So that would be Patrick. Chance has to stay in the fight though, because they're both still young. But Patrick, I think, has just become a more and more consistent guy throughout his time here, and that that really shone through for him this fall for the first time. I thought just that consistency level. Patrick is a very hard worker. He's worked his tail off since he's been here. Really developed quite a bit since coming in here as a freshman out of Florence, and now he's in this position where he is one play away. And I think Coach Sturbeck and our offense feels good about that.
How much did that last scrimmage where Justin goes 16 of 18 that factor into the competition, and also just what you see from Justin's playmaking ability throughout fall camp to name the starter?
Well, I think that scrimmage probably capped it off, so to speak. I know we had a couple more practices, but his ability to complete the football, to make good decisions, to spread the football around was evident that day. I do think he has playmaking capability both with his arm and his legs, and I think his know-how too. So, that's going to be a work in progress. He's played, he's played at Stanford, so it's not like he hasn't ever played college football. But being the regular starter, this is the first time that he's been handed that opportunity, I guess. I say that. I mean, he worked for it, but he's got that opportunity, and we're behind him. And I know he doesn't have to do it all at the same time. I think that's what he needs to recognize. We have other playmakers. We have running backs, receivers, tight ends that will need to make plays, and he's got to find a way just to allow them to do that. So, work in progress for sure. But we felt really good about his progress, and that scrimmage was an indication of that.
I just want to ask about a couple other positions. I guess first, Jason Seth at corner. I guess what made them kind of the right names for those roles?
Yeah, I think Jay Seth and Carson. We can only start two. I think if we could start three, they'd all start. I guess they're all probably going to be seen in the light as starters. I think Takari will definitely get on the field as well. Speaking about Jace, really consistent approach from the first day he got here. Never too high, never too low, but at the same time, extremely talented. And then Seth, I think, has been one of the big risers through the course of this whole calendar year. And really appreciate him becoming more consistent. I think he and Carson flashed both in spring ball while they didn't have that same level of consistency. So, again, we have to start with two. We can't start with three, so it'll be those two out there. And Carson's going to get plenty of run too. So, excited about that group as redshirt freshmen, and they're going to have some thick skin. I think that's what comes with that playing that position. And I think Coach Crane has done a really good job of preparing them, coaching them appropriately, coaching them hard, honestly, and excited for what that group will be able to do, and they're going to be challenged as much as anybody out there on Saturday.
Earlier in camp, you kind of mentioned this idea of a top six on the O-line, I guess, in terms of Cedric versus Braden at left tackle. I guess I know you can only start one, I guess, but Cedric.
Yeah, I think you'd probably go back to two things. Probably, I think experience for one. As close as that battle was, I mean, they're both still young, but Cedric's obviously been out there. I think Cedric, probably having still 20-some pounds on Braden, I think allows him to do a few things. Braden's gonna play. I think the idea that whether we would just play 5 or then play 6, we definitely go into this week with the mindset that Braden will play.
And then I guess just one more, just Ryan and Chris get those start spots at X and C.
Yeah, I think let's speak to Ryan first and foremost. Ryan missed spring. I think where he was going to be at was a big question mark. Ryan did some things for us last fall. I know we were excited to get him back. Initially, we didn't know if that'd be a 1 or 2 year opportunity for him, but as he became healthy, he does possess some really good skill, and size along with that. So, I think he's had a good jump this fall relative to maybe where we thought he might be, honestly, coming off missing spring ball. And Chris, I think our intention was going out and finding a starting receiver, and I think in our opportunity, Chris saw that, and he's a guy that's flashed quite a bit, but more than anything, I think it's fit in really well too, and really appreciates being here, and that's after spending five seasons in a program and coming here, clear across the country. So I really appreciate what Chris has been able to do just as a teammate, but then I think he's got some real playmaking ability as well.
And Jabez, kick returner, what went into that decision?
Well, he's got a really good knack with the ball in his hands, I guess, first and foremost. That was a little bit of a rotating position for us last year. We never really probably settled ourselves in. So that was going to be up for grabs, and going back to spring, he was certainly one of the candidates. We didn't do as much with kick return in the spring to be able to really pull that out, but I think he's a young player that we get the ball in his hands, he's going to do good things, and that opportunity on the kickoff return in our game is fairly limited. I know Oregon's kicker has a really high touchback percentage, so whether we get any opportunities this week or not, I don't know. But when we have them, we got to be able to do something with it. We weren't very productive in the kick return game last year, and that's with a real narrow amount of opportunities. So it's our hope that Jabez can solidify that position and be effective when given a chance.
And that kicker, I know you guys faced back in 22 when he was at Oregon State, but obviously a lot of guys you haven't faced. So what stands out about him, but also just some of the guys that you're looking at that will go up against on offensive defense?
Well, they turn over quite a bit. I think that's the first thing that you see, but you go back to the style of play, I guess, that they were able to get to last year, by the end of the season, and go through the regular season undefeated, win the Big Ten championship, and then go on in the playoff. They have talent all over the place, and I think the things that jump out is they were extremely disruptive up front on defense. Offensively, playmakers all over the place. They had a really experienced quarterback in Dylan Gabriel that they put a lot on. So what does that mean for this year? I think you're going to be a team that's got so many of the same characteristics, even though it's going to be some different guys. So you can't maybe get locked into, who's going to be their primary guys at some places relative to how it's going to be maybe a few weeks down the road, but they are going to be disruptive up front. They do return some guys up front that did that last year, and they've added pieces like that. Extremely athletic on the back end. Offensively, less experienced certainly at quarterback than they've been the last few years. They've had the two most experienced quarterbacks in the history of college football. So that's going to change. So what does that mean? I would suggest that's going to mean, they're going to have to lean more and more on all those playmakers, and those playmakers have changed a little bit too. So I think the big thing is, let's not get caught up into maybe certain individuals so much as know that they're going to be good all over the place. We got to be on our game and probably then some. We're capable of that, and we can't do anything to inflict wounds on our own self. I think that's the type of game you need to play. They're gonna make plays. They got playmakers abound on both sides of the ball, but we have guys that make plays, and we're gonna have to go in and do that, and be able to withstand a bunch of blows at the same time. So not getting too deep into the individuals on their team, but they're gonna look the part. They're gonna play real hard, because that's what they've certainly become, is not just a talented team, but a very well coached team, a team that plays with the right type of passion and emotion for the game, and that's why they were so successful, not only last year, but in the years building up to last year.
And the Idaho game, how much have you thought about that? Watched film on that? Just use that maybe going into this one.
Well, you watch all the games, and that game happened, and we can't count on some of the things that maybe happened in that game happening again. I think, but the big thing is you got to hang in there, and that's what Idaho was able to do. They didn't do much offensively in the first half, but they hung in there on defense, and you find yourself getting into that second half, and you're in the game. That's what you want to be, and it becomes more and more maybe complicated on their side, and you build confidence off that. But our expectation more than anything is we got to play as well as we can play. We can't assume anything but Oregon's best, and you believe that your best can stack up, and that's how we got to go about it. We got guys again that can make plays, and come Saturday, we're going to have to be in the right place. We're going to have to make the plays when we got an opportunity to, and understand they're going to make some along the way as well.
Talking about that D-line group, how much growth have you seen the past year from Cruz and Parsons in that end room?
Yeah, I think both Zach and Hunter have, taken the necessary strides to, that they needed to elevate in an elevated role, but to elevate their games. I think, our track record over the last 4 years is guys, taking on greater roles each year, and then, those guys being able to step up, into those roles. So that's the expectation for those two. And I think they're chomping at the bit to get that opportunity. They've both been on the field, but they'll be on the field more and be counted on more. So, that's the growth that those opportunities. You want to see that opportunity, those opportunities grow, but you want to see the growth like they've both had along the way, and excited about what they'll be able to do.
In terms of preparing for Oregon's offense, just knowing they have a new quarterback, you mentioned the roster turnover. I guess what is that? How does that affect game prep and any previous experience you can maybe rely on for that?
Yeah, same coordinator. So, you look at their volume, which became very extensive, I would say, by the end of the year, and you really try to do the best you can to predict out of that. I think the expectation is they've done a great job of getting their playmakers opportunities. So identifying, I guess who those playmakers are going to be is part of how you're going to take last year's film and the departures they've had and translate it to this year. I think the quarterback piece is one that, yes, whoever it is going to be new, but they've been in the program too, so they're not brand new. Both guys that are battling for the job were both there last fall, so you have to assume that they were pretty entrenched with what they were doing all year. So not an easy job, I think, to predict, but I think when you get in the game, hopefully a few drives in, you can back away and assess it and get a more narrow scope of what you think, because if you take a look at all 14 of their games, it's a pretty broad scope. And yes, they graduate the guy that was pulling the trigger for the most part, but they were about much more than that last year, and they're going to be about much more than that this year.
And then in terms of defense, I know Dan Lanning obviously has the defensive background. I guess how familiar are you with his defensive philosophy and maybe some of the playmakers that do return on that side?
Yeah, they're multiple. They're sound at the same time. They're willing to get after you. I think their athleticism on the back end allows them to, put those guys in positions to play coverage, and just keep you on your toes, I guess, as an offense. So yeah, I had a lot of appreciation for the type of defense they play, and they certainly don't beat themselves on that side of the ball. I know they have plenty of turnover on that side of the ball. So what does that mean game one? I'm sure it means they're going to do everything they can to just get those guys, new or not, to play as fast as they can. And same thing goes there. I think we'll have to get a fair assessment after a couple of series. Just were we on track with what we thought, or are they a little bit different? And how we match up front, I think is a big piece to it. If they feel like they can consistently get after you with 4 guys, that's not a good thing. We got to be able to hold our own up front, and we've been able to do that. But this will be, as steep a challenge as we've had.
Names on the back of the jerseys for the first time this year. Can you speak at all to what went into that decision?
Yeah, we got new jerseys. When I got here in 21, they had just gotten new jerseys without names. From what I've understood, it was a budget choice back whenever, and when we would have an opportunity to move forward with that, that was something we wanted to do. I know I've been asked about it a lot from our fans that make it easier watching us. So it's generally part of everybody's uniform. It hadn't been the last couple sets for us. We made it a part of it. It's not going to change who we are. We're still, obviously about the name on the front, and it was just, it was kind of rounding out our new look more than it was anything more than that.
And then just any thing on the any preparation for the environment, crowd noise, things like that you guys are doing?
Yeah, with our scoreboard and sound system that we added last year, our ability to put realistic noise in the stadium is much different than it was prior. So we've been able to practice with noise quite a bit, and as this week goes on, it certainly doesn't quite match what that'll feel like on a game day, in a packed stadium. But we're doing the best we can in that regard, as far as the working at the communication that still has to exist, when it's as loud as it's going to be.
Coulter, do you have anything? Hey, Coach, can you hear me okay?
Gotcha.
One follow-up on Justin Lamson. I asked him the same thing. To come into a program and sort of establish yourself as a leader when you are relatively new, it seems like a balancing act, right? You don't want to come off as abrasive or too sort of headstrong. How do you think he went about it that way, and then how was he able to sort of rise to a leadership perspective like he has?
Well, you hope the guy can just come in and be himself and just do that, and that's where my knowledge of him and who I thought he was as a person, going back to when he was a high school junior, I felt good about it. I didn't feel like he was gonna assume anything. He was the type of guy that, whether it was out of high school or out of transfer, he just would fit in here, and I think he did that right from the get-go, and then it becomes, okay, new guy here, how is he going to work? And right from the start, I think it was apparent to his teammates that this guy's going to work hard, and he's going to work not only hard at the weight room and everything, but he's going to work at the relationship piece to it, communicating. He's not going to be standoffish. He's going to get out and get to know guys, whether that's in this building or elsewhere. So I don't think it was anything super complicated for Justin. Again, just showing up day one and being yourself and fitting in and working at it a little bit is kind of how we went about it. And I think pretty significant progress, I would say, but that happened pretty quickly. It wasn't like this was a 4-month deal. This was, I would say, within the first couple weeks, I think he was already feeling, like I belong here.
When you have like this 9 months of off season and then you transition into actually game planning for an opponent, how do you hope the guys sort of jump into that, and what do you expect is from a sort of a picking it up type stuff week one here?
Well, I think first and foremost, you hope they're really hungry to play, which they are. I think that's what the off season and all the prep, you need to live in those moments. You need to appreciate those moments, but ultimately it's geared towards these opportunities in the fall. And as far as that transition, we spend a lot of time spring, summer, fall camp just going against ourselves, and I think there is a piece to that where we go good on good a lot, and those opportunities to go against a really good player across from you is hopefully setting you up to go against really good players on Saturdays, regardless of the scheme. And we transitioned to more of a scout team idea, starting last week. But we still do some good on good and, integrate the scheme. You want to make things as relative as you can, so there's still some good on good we can go that really makes sense. And to some degree we want to do what we do, I guess. You don't want to change a whole lot just because you have this opponent and they do this opponent and they do this. Really establish some foundational principles and schemes that you're going to do week in, week out, regardless of who you play, and then how do those intricacies work. So I think our guys have made the transition well. Are we going to see an opponent unlike we've maybe seen on Saturday? I suppose in some ways, but I know that they can only put 11 out there. We can put 11 out there. those 11 are going to be really good on the other side. I like our guys as well, and again, we have to be able to play fast. So as a group of coaches, you can't extend them too far, especially in a first game. So we're ready to play it, another team, and that's the biggest piece to this transition, is just, again, going back to that hunger and that opportunity that I think our guys feel and are excited about.
I'm sure you guys well aware of just the prestige of Oregon, being the number 1 seed in the playoffs last year and a top 10 team this year. But how do you sort of take that as an opportunity rather than be intimidated by it, just the prestige of the Oregon program?
Yeah, it's just that it's an opportunity. Through these guys' lifetime, Oregon's been a top flight program. It's been a long time since they weren't. And so they know Oregon as one of the elites. And all that being said, I think you got to see it as an opportunity to really truly be tested. And ultimately, each one of these tests, these opponents are going to be a little bit different each week, and we have to be able to show up and be our best no matter who we play. And that's, what that says about this week is we can't all of a sudden become something we can't become. I think we got to just be the best version of what we are, and to have that test come on such a big stage against such a top flight program. We're thrilled about the opportunity. Our guys are, and there's always that underdog mentality when an FCS team plays an FBS team, anyways, and I think that's personified in an opportunity like this more than we've had in my time here. And we got to go out there and go after it, period.
One depth chart question for me: Kobe Froker, a true freshman, was the #1 punter. What allowed him to gain that spot? And also, obviously, a huge opportunity for him to make his college debut at one of the great venues in college football.
Yeah, his opportunity goes back to having a really good camp the previous summer. With Brendan graduating, we knew last summer that we needed to replace him. Our preference was to go the high school route versus the transfer route. And Colby really impressed us at the camp back in the summer of '24, and he really followed it up with a spectacular senior year. And I say a senior year where in football, he's playing receiver, he's playing safety, he's place kicking, he's kicking off, he's punting, handling it all. Handling pressure, made a 50-plus yard field goal in the state semifinal game. And he's an all-state caliber basketball player, scratch golfer. He's qualified in track, I think, for the state meet as well. So point being is, okay, you have this freshman with some ability that you saw at camp, but how is he going to be able to handle an opportunity like this? And I think the competitor in him, added to the ability, is what I think what we saw, and I think we've felt good about how that's looked through the course of fall camp. And is he going to be perfect? Probably not, but I think his ability to bounce back from both a good kick and a not so good kick, whether it's a punt or a kickoff, I think is going to be there, because I think he's been on that field, he's been on the court, he's been a competitor, period, and I think his belief in himself is strong, and that's why I think we felt so good about bringing him as a true freshman and allowing him to be our punter and kicker right out the gate.
Last one for me. Talking to your guys over the last several weeks, they all seem so excited to sort of make this team their own and write their own chapter of their story. What excites you the most about this football team headed into 2025?
Well, I think each and every year, that's what you're kind of going through at this point in time, and it doesn't matter sometimes whether you return a whole bunch of guys or not. There is a newness to the team, and I think this team is obviously no different. So there's just that, I think, internal curiosity that comes with this time of year that might be nerve-wracking at times, but is also very enjoyable. And you see guys grow, and they maybe do things you hadn't quite expected. And you know that, this team coming together is still a work in progress, and that's to some degree still out in front of us. So I don't know, it's a crazy profession we're in, but I think the unknown is part that fuels you. I think each and every day it drives you to give them, your players, your very best, and then just let them go out and become that. So, I'm really excited about just what this team can become, and it's this moving target. Ultimately, we want to be our best down the road, but what's our best going to be this Saturday? Okay, and then we set the bar, and then it's hopefully we can keep raising as we go along. So, this is a team that you're right. I think wants to chart its own course, build off what we've done. I think they sense that there's some doubt out there, and that's okay. There should be. We lost a lot of good players last year, and at the same time, there's expectations that this program is going to do things that it's done before, and how does this team figure it out? So, we've been doing a lot of figuring it out since we got back in January, and excited to see how we go after that on Saturday.
Thank you.